Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Hey, Mark.
Mark.
Yeah. Obviously, there's something new to the room today. Mark is on a cruise in Greece right now, and we're in this room.
But we're with you.
But we're with you, and it's great, and we're happy to be here. But Mark will be back in a little bit. Next week, we'll have a special guest, so we're looking forward to that. But this week, dude, you tackled one of the most complicated, ambiguous, but I think you nailed it pretty well. So let's start with, where did you land in terms of like what stood out most? Because you're talking end times. If you missed it, sermon was on end times, Jesus trying to correct some thoughts and thought processes when it comes to when's the world going to end, how's it going to end. So what was your kind of like favorite moments of this journey, Mark 13 journey?
Honestly, I think my favorite moment, I kind of told a couple people yesterday about it, was really just like the whole thing. Not to be a cop-out, but just like the overarching idea of, if you first look at this passage, of course it's subtitled, Jesus speaks about the future, or Jesus speaks about the end times, depending on your translation. Yeah. And so at first you're just like, oh, like you just automatically think like apocalyptic, Revelation, blah, 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 end of Daniel. And you're like, oh, this is going to be a lot. Like, and almost like you decide like, let me put on my interpretation glasses of, but that's really not at all what it is. And so that to me was kind of the, it's kind of like a lot of scripture. There's big chunks of scripture that if you read it at face value and don't dig any deeper, you're probably gonna miss the point. Yeah. You're gonna probably miss the whole point of what the writer is trying to get at, or what the parable or the story or the narrative or the event is getting at. So really, that's it for me. Is like, first look, you're like, apocalypse. Like, let's figure out the signs. But that's the opposite of what Jesus is saying. And in fact, he's saying, don't worry about the signs. Yeah. It's going to happen with you. Exactly. Like, it's going to happen if you're earthly, if this body's alive, or if it's not. So, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, don't try to predict. And I think the most, the thing the Spirit left me with the most was, and I said it in the sermon, was, don't be so concerned about the second coming that you miss the first coming. And I think that, to me, is kind of what lands, what hits home to me the most about, basically, if you were to sum up the whole chapter in one sentence, I think that's it. Like, don't be so distracted with predicting the second coming or figuring out what the signs are going to be that you just totally miss the first coming. That's right. And the empowerment, the Spirit that he gives us, that he leaves behind with us, and what the Spirit enables us to be able to do. Yeah.
Now, I love how I think for all of the visual learners out there, when you did the temple picture, that was super impactful. Yeah. Because it was like, and my whole like idea that I really been latching onto recently of just like, man, sometimes our spirits really just need to be like blown away. And your whole thing of just looking down at the temple and being like, oh my, and then all the stats you gave of, I didn't even really know that Herod had built that much onto it. Yeah. But like from Solomon to Jesus, it was just a really different temple and a really different area specifically. But man, the stones, the massiveness, and then you put, I love how you're like, this guy's standing next to these stones, and he's like 7'5".
Yeah. Just to put that literally came to me live in first service, and I was like, kind of like a little. I feel like it kind of helps re-grab people's attention when you say something, even if they don't hear it.
That's right.
When they hear other people like, what? Even if
he's 7, what?
And then they just are like, oh wait, what's he talking about? And then the pictures came from Tim Mackey.
Nice.
The video you sent me actually of his. I don't really think it was a sermon. It was more like a Bible class, and so I listened to it. Yeah. I listened to it like on whatever Spotify on audio, and he kept referencing images, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go find this video because I want to know what it like. I'm interested as a learner. Like, what's he reading or talking about? Because he was like, look at the temple, and I was like, I gotta see. So I literally just pulled a couple of the pictures from that and just like plug and play. It's like, man, these are great. Like,
it is.
And especially he didn't say it in this, but I got to thinking, where is the Mount of Olives? Because I mean, they're looking at it. I mean, it's kind of clear that there's an indication of they're looking at it. I'm like, where is it? And that's exactly that photo that he used just to show the size of the temple is exactly the perspective they would have had. And they can look right into, of course, they didn't have binoculars, so I don't think they could actually see anything happening or, whatever. But they could, the idea is like, as you're looking right now, as you're looking now at the representation of God, God stands right in front of you.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of an interesting, like, I don't think it was an accident. He went to the Mount of Olives, and it's just so rich in imagery and these. It's just like you get one level, and then you start thinking, and you're like, oh, there's another level, and then there's another level, where to me it continuously brings to life. Like the more we read into Mark, to me it keeps bringing into life how Jesus says, like, those who have eyes will see, and those who have ears will hear. Like it's just like if you're in tune, there's going to be so many layers that are just going to keep being revealed. Yeah. And, Scripture's a living, breathing word. So it's just like every time you read something, you're just like, God, I felt like every time I went back through it, I was finding something new. I cut literally 10 minutes of the sermon before because I was like,
that's a lot.
I didn't even do the last 7 verses. I was just like, I could make that 3 hours. Yeah. Like, there's so much.
Full exploration.
Oh, dude. And there was things I kind of was thinking to say, like between first and second, that I just felt like I was out of time. Like I was just like, dude, there's just so much. Yeah, so we got to do like a round table.
Yeah.
Bible study on the rest of Mark. I feel like we've covered the whole thing. We haven't even touched it. It feels like we've
dropped a piece of water. We dropped a drop of water for sermons, 1 drop for podcast, and then a lake.
But you've got a whole
exactly
5-gallon bucket. You've got 2 drops in a 5-gallon bucket, and you're not even. And 5-gallon bucket is probably slap in the face of Jesus. Probably even to do it justice, lake might be better. So, but yeah. What about you? Anything other than the magnitude of the temple?
No, I mean, it was really like, I think when we try and understand, and my mind goes there, all of our minds go there. It's really hard not to piece together. Like if you've read Revelation or you like,
it's interesting.
It is.
We like mysteries. We like to try and solve them. And
absolutely, and that's. I mean,
best
I think
movies.
Sometimes we take Revelation and we act as if it's like a Sherlock Holmes novel, and it's like it's supposed to be 1, digestible, 2, it's supposed to be discoverable. So it's like I'm supposed to understand all this, and I love how you were talking about the beasts in Daniel.
Yeah. Of
like, yes, it's not that Daniel saw a lion, a leopard, and a bear. It's that he saw beasts that looked like them. Like he didn't even have framework, so he's just like, the best thing I can get is a leopard with wings.
And then the fourth one,
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I've even had ChatGPT. It's so funny. I had ChatGPT I was like, show me the beast, and it was just like, it doesn't meet our like. It's like restricted.
Wow.
And I was like, dude, what? I was like, what?
Dude.
What's the government keeping from us?
Oh, show us the beast.
What's the 4th beast?
Even the Isaiah passage where it talks about like the Ancient of Days sitting on the throne, I'd ChatGPT that.
Yeah.
And I was going to, honestly, I thought about putting it in, but it wasn't going to help us continue. So I was like,
you
should do that.
Another rabbit trail.
If you have a minute, ChatGPT, it's Isaiah like 13, chapter 13 for sure, but I think verse 10 is that Ancient One description. Please go ChatGPT that, bro. I was like, golly, it was kind of like the one you did where you're just like, whoa. And I think ChatGPT can't even do it justice, but just an inkling of an image, you're like, golly.
Even just another drop in the bucket,
lot of fire.
It's just like
a lot of fire coming around him. But
I think too, with Jesus' destruction of the temple, his claim that that's going to happen, and I love how you put even more so. It's like, in my head, when Babylon comes in and destroys everything, it's like light it on fire and everything. But like, man, just taking a whole week, just and like
who knows how long?
Exactly. Think about how long, like, getting rid of stuff and even dedicating it, like just a general telling the soldiers, "Hey, we're gonna spend 3 weeks here, and you're gonna push these stones."
There's a little backstory to that.
Just the magnitude,
dude. That Titus, his. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
I've said it so many times now. I'm like, is that right? Titus. There's some belief, and it doesn't matter, so I didn't bring it up. But it's interesting that they did catch they burnt the temple as well. They threw like fire bombs in there.
Yeah.
But there was some belief he instructed his people not to desecrate it, like not to destroy it.
Sure.
Now, why? Probably he wanted to do a lot more sacrifices and things in there to desecrate it in other ways.
Yeah.
But there's some belief that he instructed his army not to destroy it.
Yeah.
At least not at first. And so basically the thought is like some random soldier just started it.
Yeah.
So I love that idea that even the leader of the one who's desecrating God's temple didn't plan to, but yet it still happens.
Wow.
Even because of just the prophecy being fulfilled. And so I was just like, man, that's
wow.
We don't know. There's no way to know, but
Sure.
it's interesting to think like, but even so, them destroying, and the only reason they would ever do that with the rocks, that much effort, would be a total, we just want to annihilate or prove how much more powerful our gods are than they are of their gods. So the only reason they would ever do that, take that time to do that, is to spit in the face of the god, right? So what's so funny is that they are on their accord trying to dishonor the God of Israel by doing that. But by doing that, they prove Jesus to, like, they further prove a prophecy that Jesus states, a future telling. So I just found that interesting, and that's one of those things you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and
there's just more and more. I mean, the historical level too.
Yeah.
It's like I was one of my church history classes in seminary was we had this book, and it was called Turning Points. It's really cool. It's like 12 chapters of like 12 moments in which Christianity just exploded since Jesus left the earth. And the very first one is 70 AD with the temple. And I think it's like, I don't even think we in our American culture have something so significant, because it's like, if you go to Washington DC, you'll see all the buildings, but they really don't mean anything.
Right.
Like the White House, for example, it's the White House. It's special. It's the living space of the leader of America. But like, there's nothing. I'm just trying to think of, is there anything that's us kind of thing? If maybe all of Washington just blew up and all the history was gone forever. Yeah. Like that would be
even the Washington Monument.
Like the Smithsonian's, all the museums on the Strip, like
gone.
If everything just like imploded or just was wiped out and somebody just tried to get rid of all artifact of America. Like, yes, I think like getting rid of the whole Smithsonian, the whole mall, like all of it, that would be this just, that's America. That's everything we've got is just this cool town of just history and buildings and all of this. And to be able to say like, that none of that matters, because it really isn't. And we say that kind of the same thing, like America's a people, like America's us. And I think that's what the Lord's trying to do here, because you build this massive thing and then go previously all the way back into Exodus, and you get back and then go a little further into Samuel. God's like, I want this tent. It's going to be mobile. You're going to be able to put it up, tear it down. We're going to go everywhere. And then David comes along a couple hundred years later, and he's like, man, we need to show God's glory. Let's build this massive temple. And he's just like, God's like, what's wrong with my tent? I never asked you to build this. Like what? And then God lets Solomon build this amazing thing, and it just becomes like, at first it is this moment of like, wow, but then it just becomes obsolete. Like everybody who, like neighboring nations, when they start coming over to attack, one of the first things that goes is like, we'll strip the gold off the temple doors and let's pay them. Or like Assyria comes down and they're like, hey, we're going to kill all of you. And they're like, okay, great. Let's go into the temple, get all the gold out of the treasury, and let's pay them. And it just becomes this like thing. Yeah. And I think that's what God always meant it for it to be. But that first turning point was like, one of the best blessings you see throughout history was that the temple was completely destroyed, because what that did is that pushed everybody out of Jerusalem. And we have the whole debate of, is the Holy Land still holy? Is it still where God? And I think that it's so sweet to have remnants of that, right? There's still a wall, but like, man, who is the kingdom of God? Who are the people of God? And that, like, trying to understand the weight of Jesus saying this is all going to go. It's like, we don't have a context for how important and how special that really is.
And Mark and I were talking about this a little bit last week, and that was one of the things that we talked about was like, is the temple ever going to be rebuilt? And, it's kind of that question of like, I don't really think there's any prophecy or anything that says like it'll never be rebuilt. Sure. It just talks about its destruction. But Mark said there's a pretty large group that want to rebuild. It's not currently controlled. It's not. There's a lot of political stuff with that of like certain people control it and you can't. Yeah. But his thing is like there's a group trying to regain access to be able to rebuild it. And so he and I were both discussing. I was like, I kind of feel like just on what I see, it kind of indicates that almost Jesus, with the image that Jesus is now within us, we are the temple, that our bodies are a living temple, that we house the Lord, that it'll never be rebuilt. It's kind of my thought. It almost seems like it's never going to be rebuilt because that's kind of the image that Jesus is showing, that it's going to be destroyed, but it's not necessary anymore. Like it was.
Absolutely.
It was like, because it was God's at home.
Sure.
But the veil's torn.
Yeah.
He's gone. Like not gone. He's outside. He's extended.
You take that image too of like you have this massive like 500-yard area, square foot area, or whatever the dimensions you were saying it was, but then you have this tiny room in the middle of everything. This tiny room. It's really not that grand and it's really not that big, and that's where God wanted to be, in the heart, in the deepest places, in the tiniest places, in the center of it all. But then you have the majesty of the whole temple. And I think part of what Jesus was doing there was just like, what is more majestic? And we've been talking a lot about this in Mark of just like, is my view of God more grand than the temple? And I think Jesus is really trying to get it here. It's just like, what's the most impressive thing in your life? Is it the Lord God Almighty? The one who created the stars and created the heavens, and it's really hard, and I think that it's sweet too that the Lord, and as Paul's going to say, like, okay, say the temple's rebuilt or anything, is the Lord really going to dwell there? I think Paul nails it on the head of just like, where is the Lord dwelling now? As all of this we've seen, where is he now? It's within the human. Like, you are the temple of God. You are the grandness of this stuff. And then the Holy of Holies now becomes the deepest recesses of your being. Like places that you don't see, places, and it's wild to think that what housed God is now within me, within you, within anybody who says, I want Jesus. Kind of thing.
It's kind of like how we've done ChatGPT of like the pictures of Mount Sinai, and then the picture of I didn't put it on Sunday morning, but of the Ancient of Days image. It should bring us to a point of like even the depiction I recognize the depiction doesn't even touch it, but it helps me at least understand the magnitude. That's what the temple should do.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be so amazed by the temple like the disciples were. We should look at the temple, they should look at the temple and say, how magnificent, but how much more magnificent is God? Like, if I can't understand, I now, 2,000 years later, I can't grasp how they made the stones that big. Like, I don't even understand. And, of course, I found some other stuff. Is like they think they found the quarry where they got the rock and stuff like that. But it's like, how do you even... and then I'm thinking, how do you even topple over those rocks in the first century? I'm like, now we'd get a crane, and I think that would work. I'm guessing they're strong enough. No idea. Yeah. But I'm like, you got 50 guys with crowbars, like, and they're breaking crowbar. Like, I don't know. They're 1 million pounds. I'm like,
siege machines. How do you even? They're just trying to push over everything.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I can't even fathom. And so that should bring us to the point of like, how much bigger is God? Like, how much more almighty? Which kind of leads to what I never got to, which was the day or the hour part. And to be honest, I think it's probably God ordained that I didn't, because I think that's where people get hung up on the most.
Sure.
I think it's almost like this is the spot where people go like,
how much time do I have left?
Yeah, what is the day or the hour? And
it strikes in fear too.
Yeah. The fact that no one knows. And so this is verse 32. Yeah. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen. Not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. And since you don't know when that time will come, be on guard, stay alert. Of course, Jesus' emphasis here is the back half. It's not on the figuring it out. It's what's the warning or what's the call? Be on guard and stay alert. And so what's interesting about this, no one knows the day or the hour. There's some understanding that this is a Jewish idiom. And so this phrase can lead to a couple thoughts, but one of the thoughts is Rosh Hashanah, which is the head of the year for them. So throughout the way their calendar worked was based on the lunar cycle. Yeah. And so their month would start at the new moon, and it would go to 15 days into the full moon, and then it would recede back. So their month was about 29 days.
How simple is that?
Yeah, and it would, as it receded back to the new moon, once it hit the new moon, that was the next month. And so what they would do is they would be able to start this cycle where they would kind of know the annual holidays. The only problem was the month that we know as September for them was the start of something different. They had to then see the new moon again. Yeah. The other months, they would be able to, the second weekend, like Saturday, Shabbat. So they would be able to know the cycle ahead of time. But then when they get to September, they have to, to be honest with you, I couldn't really find an answer. Mark might know, but it was just like, well, they had to. And I was like, okay, well, I don't. So, but anyway, but what they would do is the high priest would send out two watchmen, okay? And they would go out on a mountain or whatever. They'd be separate. There's actually 3 or 4. Yeah. But 2 would be the reporters, and the others were backups. I guess they got eaten by a bear on the way back or something.
Fell asleep,
yeah. So they would go to different spots, and they would watch, and they would both give their account of the new moon. They would come back to the high priest. They would both separately and individually describe their experience, and that was when the high priest would announce, like, it's the new moon, or I don't know what he would say, Rosh Hashanah. And so then they would send out to the people around, like, the city and on the edges that would light these fires, and they would blow these trumpets, signifying the start of the new year. So the point of this is that no man knows the day or the hour of that new moon until it's there. Yeah. They don't know until it's there. There's no way they can't prepare for the future holidays. They can't prepare for events. They can't prepare for feasts because they don't know. And so it kind of brings to life what Jesus is saying here a little bit of like, you don't know until it's declared. Yep. And you don't know until it's seen. And so these 2 watchmen see it and they report back, and then the high priest says it's happened. It's already happened. Basically, here we go. And so that's kind of the indication. And so now some people think that the world's going to end on a Rosh Hashanah. That's when it's going to happen, but that's missing the point. I think the point is we don't know, and you're never going to know. So don't try and figure it out. Yeah, it's pointless. It's a waste of your time.
That's right.
What's worthy of your time, Jesus says, is to be on guard, stay alert, share my good news. Live in the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when we play this game of like, how much time do we have left? Yep. And we look at Revelation, and I love how this passage points it out of like, we know culturally, and we know how our culture specifically, and I think we have a little flair on it in the South as well, like really focused on the day of the Lord and Judgment Day and things like that. And it's a different vibe, I think, for a southeast part of the Bible Belt area too, who hones in on this, just like it's all going to end, like good message, like it's all going to end, but it's more about, we get into Bible studies of Revelation. It's like, this is what, but then what Jesus is saying is, you see the stereotypical like earthquakes and wars and famines and all these things like that. But that's just like the beginning of contractions. That's the beginning of pregnancy. And I love that that's the analogy where it's just like, the baby's not coming. The second you feel a contraction, it might be, a day, 2, 3, something around like a little bit while, but it's just the beginning. Yeah. And we're trying, I had a few people I know of who are just like, they read news articles all day and they're just like, this is it. And I mean, like, even when the war with Gaza and Palestine and Israel that's going on right now, like that's another example where people last year or 2 years ago were just like, this is it. Like, this is great. And it's just like, this is just the beginning. Yeah. And it's still the beginning. Yeah. And you're right, like in this space of like, when Jesus says be alert, I think my mind goes to like, be alert of what? Be alert of that it's all coming to an end and that I need to get ready. Like, get ready for what? And if we don't have a good answer for that, other than my life's going to come to end and everybody's going to go to judgment. Like, how do you get ready for that? Do you start going to church more? Do you like what's the action? Like, what are you, one, getting ready for, and two, how do you get ready? And I think that's a big question when it comes to end times that will totally pacify like the craziness and like, what am I getting ready for? I'm getting ready to finally meet the Creator. I'm getting ready to see everything for what it is. And how do you get ready for that? What Jesus is saying is, do you love me? Like, are you and I in relationship to one another? And I think that's like the big part of just in this. And it was going into a thought that we were having in the temple conversation, but it's just like, I think the temple destruction and how the Old Testament leading up to Jesus saying this is all coming to an end, and the temple hasn't been rebuilt for 2,000 years. Like, it is still the same space it was when it was destroyed in 70 AD than it is right now. Yep. And I think you ask yourself, what led to that? And it was that piece by piece of like, when we see in 1 Kings 11 where Solomon dedicates the temple, and it is just this massive, like, everything that happened on Sinai happens at the temple, and it's thunder and lightning, and it's crazy, and everybody's worshiping the Lord, and it is just one of the greatest spectacles, I think, in Jewish history. But then bit by bit, Babylon comes in, neighboring nation comes in, pay up. Okay, great. We'll strip all the jewels off the temple, all these things, and it just degrades and degrades and degrades. Right. And then the temple just becomes useless. And I think going back to fitting that into a practical standpoint, it's just like, there are moments where we see Jesus in his fullness, and we see his, getting ready of like, man, I see you. This is amazing. I want to follow you, Jesus. But then when it comes time to tough things, when it comes time for attacks and enemies and things in our life, what's in the Old Testament and Kings, like, what's the first thing that goes? It's the temple. It's the Lord. And it's not like, oh, they came in and destroyed it right away. It was like bit by bit. First, it's the gold off the doors. Then it's the money in the treasury. And I think that's how our hearts also operate. Yeah. Like, when I'm faced with something in my life, when I get hurt, or when I go through a tough circumstance, it's like, what's the first thing that usually takes a hit? My relationship with the Lord. I get really busy. What's the first thing that gets cut? Prayer time. Or the next time it's, I was working on my emotions. That's the first thing that goes because I'm so stressed and I just need to blow up or something. Or I'm walking away from this addiction, whether it's a substance, whether it's porn, whether it's something like, what's the first thing that goes? My self-control and my path to follow the Lord without those things. I think, man, it's just like bit by bit by bit. That's how the temple comes down. It's not this, oh, it's grand, and oh, I got destroyed. It's small compromises over and over and over again. Well, that is all the time we've got. We will be back next week for Mark 14, where we're going to be looking at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, talking about prayer. It's going to be sweet. And Micah, send us out.
You're loved. There's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing at all. See y'all.
Peace.